What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Wednesday Album Club. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Marty. Hi, good to see you. And look at this stranger back in town. Jim, good to see you. Welcome back, brother.
The Silver Vortex has returned. Good to
He's
be
returned.
back.
Is Chicago still standing? Is the question.
Chicago is still standing. I didn't destroy it, but I did enjoy it at Kuma's Corner, eating fake burgers and listening to real metal.
Right on. Well, now that you're back, what you been spinning?
Well, more of this Triumph of Death. Listen, a little bit of double LP live Hellhammer here. I can't remember if I've shown this before, but yeah, I really dig it. Actually, like Hellhammer was tough for me. I came into the Frost Man into Megatherion, so then from there to Morbid Tales, which quickly became my favorite. So Hellhammer I always felt was like really subpar, but essential, but subpar. But I actually really like this live one, man. I feel like a little bit better musicianship kind of shines through on this live record. So I really enjoy it. I think it's pretty sweet. Other than that, some old stuff. That's right, baby. Suicidal Joe in the Army. This one's actually my favorite. Yep. I'm Possessed Escape, but I never did it because I'm chicken.
I did it until I realized I was too fat and uncoordinated to do so. I stopped.
Yeah, I tried it like one afternoon of one day when I was a teenager.
I was a BMX guy, and I thought all you skater guys were, well, we won't say what I thought.
Well, like I said, I was never really a skater. I tried it, I failed. I always envied the guys like you that had like a Mongoose. I had the no-name brand bike that was put together by parts from wherever my dad found them. So now our kids I can't even get my kid to ride a bike, much less care about cool ones. So
Yeah.
Also, obviously, classic. My kid's learning Ace of Spades on the drums, so he's only gotten to the very beginning with this snare of
Filthy Jackson Clifton.
Yeah. I mean, that's all he's got so far. I said, but I learned it so I could play it with him. Relearned it, obviously. I mean, I've known it for many years, but relearned it. So when he gets a little further into the song, we can play it together. So yeah, I've been listening to that to kind of get ready for us to jam together on it. So that's been pretty cool. So that's it for me on the spins.
Right on. Good to see you back. Kellen, what's up, man?
Nothing much is going on.
You ready to take all the slings and arrows?
You're Jesus Christ pose, like.
Yeah,
nothing much.
I was having Hellraiser 3 moments,
I was debating on like trying to find some sort of lacy something to wear so I could frolic around.
That'd be
Nonetheless,
Prince shirt.
A mesh shirt with nothing underneath it.
Yeah,
Prince shirt from the ladies department. Y'all know where you bought that shirt.
So I'm happy to have everyone back together, and it's good to see Jim and everyone. So excited. Yes. So spinning. This I actually was gifted from Zoller. He sent this over my way, which is Pretty Maids, Red Hot and Heavy. So I've been spinning that. It's an interesting record. There's some tracks where I'm like, where is this coming from? But then some of it is like absolutely classic. So pretty interesting one. And then I finished, which should be coming your way. I have to send it over to Marty, but a review on the newest Stygian Crown release. So the self-titled release from 2020, I've been spinning that a lot this past week as well.
All right. TJ, what's going on, brother? How's it going?
Well, I'm ready for a nap after listening to this record all week. I'm real sleepy. Yeah, and I got taco on my shirt. But that aside, what have I been spinning? I finally got the second Murder Squad, Ravenous Murderous. And again, it's more just autopsy worship. Eddie Karki and Dismember guys and Grave guys and whatever. Super sick, super cool. And the recent Chemist, Deceiver. These guys are great if you haven't taken the time to listen to them. And I finally got my Kiss bug over with. I had to listen to probably the best of the four.
Oh yeah, hands down. I love that record.
But yeah, so kind of some other stuff I don't have yet, but we won't get into that. But yeah, so just trying to wake up from my nap and do this thing here with this really cool pick that Mr. Kellen picked. So there we go.
What have I been spinning? I've been back on this band, Dark and Nocturne Slaughter Cult, German black metal band with I cannot remember her name on vocals and guitar. Super sick vocalist. This is Follow the Calls for Battle, Hora Nocturna, and Nocturnal March. All three of these are great. Yeah, they don't sound like a German black metal band. They style themselves very much after the Scandinavian sound. Cross between the Finnish and the Norwegian stylistically. It isn't all the Norwegians were very good at playing like all six strings when they played a chord. They just had that more wrung out sound. The riffs are a little more straight up power chords, but they're interesting riffs, really catchy, interesting, and her vocals are so sick. It's just the type of black metal I like. Grim, nothing new, but well written, uncompromising. I dig this band a lot. I've been on a buying, it's been ridiculous, an absolute buying binge of ridiculousness. I don't know. I wish I could stop myself. But anyway, we're here tonight to talk about the third full-length album from Theater of Tragedy. It came out in 1998. Aegis? I don't know how you say it.
I want to say Aegis myself.
Aegis. We're going to say Aegis for the rest of the night.
Aegis. Nailed it.
Nailed it. And this band is no longer, they split up in... their last album came out in 2009. They're mostly known for, I think, their singer, Liv Kristine. That's kind of what she went with after this band. Espenæs, Liv Kristine Espenæs. She was on their first 5 albums from 1993 to 2003. The band's, there's a whole bunch of stuff on Wikipedia. I'm not going to read it all because it's a bunch of names I can't pronounce. The band's from Norway. They started out, Kellen tells us, in the death doom realm, and then this is their third album, very transitional. I remember getting as a promo Velvet Darkness They Fear. I really liked the cover for obvious reasons, but I greatly disliked the album because I wasn't ready to be, not Mr. Cult guy. But yeah, we're here to talk about the band's third album, Aegis, and let's start with Jim, since he's been gone for so long. What was your first impression of this record, Jim?
One solitary word was going through my mind was this
Con!
Close.
Kellen!
Close. It was actually from that same movie, but maybe it just one where it was just going no. No was the word. I was very surprised. I was kind of confused. I was all those emotions. I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, hey, is there any metal to be found?
Show us on the doll where it touched you, Jim.
Yeah. That's pretty much how it was. It was I really struggled to push my way all the way through it. I mean, and so, but I managed to do it, and tried to find some things here and there that I could relate to. Goth music isn't my thing. The deepest I get into that would be, some of the greats, you know what I mean? Like some Cure, some Susie and the Banshees, and then the heavier stuff, which people don't call goth, but it's goth to me, like Typo, that's about as far as I get. So this was, definitely outside my wheelhouse. But yeah, I worked hard to try to find some things I like, but yeah, first impressions was, what?
All right. What it is. How about you, TJ?
Yeah, so my first impression is I put this on, and when is the next song going to start? And then I'm like, is this like a 49-minute long one song record with several breaks in between? I was really looking for the dynamics here, and it just never really came. I repeated listens did bear out a few things, but I was just kind of completely blown away by the lack of any real dimension to this. It's pretty flat in my opinion, and
It is.
so
for sure.
yeah, so I kind of, I feel I'm with you, Jim, and we can, we'll talk later about where I'll show them on the doll too, where it touched me, because the front C's are back C's, but
we'll go to
sure.
therapy together.
Together, brother. We'll play with the Legos, and we'll talk to the counselor, and we'll feel better after this. There was no tears. There was no tears, Melanie. It was mostly just yawning and trying to get comfortable in the sweet spot in the chair so I could sleep to the end of the 49-minute journey of somnolence that is this record.
$5 TJ word. There it is.
Oh,
Somnolence.
there's some
$5
words.
TJ word. There it is.
We're getting there. I'm a fan of the $5 word.
Yeah,
I'm always at the
I
$5 word.
appreciate those $5 words, TJ. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
And this record, we're getting there. We'll get to that. I don't want to spoil it. There's highs and lows, mostly lows, and there's just a couple spots here where some things were like, oh, this is fun. So we'll get there. But yeah, good napping music, good sleepy time music. Yeah. So
all right. For me, it took me probably a good 3 times to get through this album once. There was a moment where I'm considering, even though I love him to death, voting Kellen off the island. But something, because I've been in a very much a raw black metal mindset. It's kind of come in, it's taken over a lot of things, but at the end of the day, I'm a fan of, here's Faith and Carnage Visors by The Cure. This album in particular, Sisters of Mercy, First and Last and Always, when it was actually a band, they actually had, drums, and I think there were drums on this. Probably not, but there was like jangly guitar. I hear both of these bands in this Aegis record. First impression, though, once I finally got through the record and started playing it, my opinion, it changed. Is it still a big warm, fuzzy hug? It isn't, but very transitional. This record sounds like metal band guys thinking they're really blowing their own minds and other people's minds by really experimenting. We're doing all this new stuff, and really people saluted. I mean, I listened to this. I remember back in the days of writing for Maniacs, I got the last album as a promo. The album before this is a promo. There was a whole world of this, the Century Media, the Nuclear Blast, the Napalm Records. This was a lane that was very lucrative. You had the Beauty and the Beast, you had Lacuna Coil, you had all these other bands that were doing this. So, yeah, whereas bands like The Gathering, I thought did it really well. They evolved out of brutal death metal into something that I love. I love Annika, the Annika era of that band. I think their death metal shit's boring and irrelevant. They actually became something really good with her singing. But anyway, yeah. Very first impression wasn't great, but the album grew on me as it went, as we will get into and discuss here later on. What about you, Kellen?
So interestingly, like just to kind of follow up on your notes, when I was listening to this record the first time around on my CD player, I had left on a function that is a repeat, and it just repeats.
Are you
the
sure?
last
Are you
song.
sure? Are you sure?
And it took me like an hour and a half of just listening. Like for the past 45 minutes, it was the last song. I had completely lost track of the fact that it was just repeating itself. So like, I was like, oh wait, this is way too familiar.
Or is it?
I guess I totally just kind of fell into whatever background trance with it. Initial impression was like, I was good with this record for about 5 minutes at a time. Like after listening to whatever the rest of the stuff that I will traditionally spin, I'd put this on and like I'd be good for the first 5 minutes of it, and then it became a little bit of a challenge to stick with it, just because, to TJ's point about that dynamic aspect of the record, it's really just kind of a sort of slow drift for 50 minutes or so. So you don't get a lot of big sort of crescendos or that sort of peaks and valley kind of experience.
Which would have been it would have really done a lot for this record if they had worked on this.
It would have been, we've not done a real goth record for this.
We toyed with a Serenia a little bit. So it's cool. It's cool that we're doing it again.
You toyed at it, but like with Sentenced, we listened before they went, goth. With Atrocity, it was like before they got weird. I was like, here is this era in the late 90s when black metal and traditional sort of death doom records are all going this direction. It was like a time period where it was a ton of stuff sounded like this. Theater of Tragedy takes like what was an additional aspect to that music and just distills it into this sort of singular goth rock kind of sound. And it was totally unlike anything we've done for Album Club. And I was almost certain we would get very intense reactions from the Metallurgists on this one. So either burn it or potentially someone would like it, but more likely you wouldn't go away with this record being like, whatever. So that was kind of the goal.
All right, cool. Do you have a thing for us?
I do, yes. Bring up my question here. Well, the first two Theater of Tragedy records were known for a kind of forlorn-leaning death doom. This record essentially dissolves metal standards of musicianship and instead relies almost entirely on gothic emotional content. Does the emotional, mournful gothic content of Aégis provide enough actual musical substance to call it a heavy metal record?
No, Marty. Yeah, I would say largely the answer is no for me. I was really bothered by the metal choices that were made on it, because I felt like they were so, kind of ham-fisted in their delivery that they were almost, kind of overstaying their welcome. Like, for example, almost every song on this record, if not every song, the totality of the guitars in terms of what we consider a metal guitar riff is palm muting following the bass line. That's it. Almost throughout the album in terms of metal riffing. Now,
the foundation, yeah.
In terms of like layering, there's melody lines that were kind of intriguing. There's even on the second song, Lorelei, the layering that goes on the chorus of that song reminds me of the Colts' first album, Love. Kind of like when they were kind of like sort of like goth new wave kind of a thing,
Yeah.
which
Good
I
call.
really love that album.
Yeah, good call.
But yeah, it's a great record, and so I kind of heard that there, and so I think, actually my favorite song on this record is one where the metal is almost not present. So what that tells me is like I feel like they should have just given themselves over entirely to like being a goth band, and maybe they did on their subsequent records. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not going to find out. But I will say that this kind of like position where they were sort of clawing at what came before, like just felt forced to me, and honestly lazy. The riffing is very, very minimal.
Yeah.
There are exceptions. AOD, AOED, however you say that. There's like an actual kind of a metal riff in the verse and the bridge. On Siren, there's like a doom riff on the bridge that leads to the chorus, which has like an actual, sort of metal riff. And there's one song where I'm trying to remember which one it is. Yeah, that might be it. I might have been it. I was trying to think there was another one, but those are the ones that kind of like stood out to me, but with their acoustic layering, with their kind of like somber melodic layering, I think they did that stuff really well. But like I felt like they were just kind of tossing me a bone with these like almost metal riffs, and it just wasn't enough. When I go back to their debut, like I felt that was a much more balanced record in terms of what a metal band with goth tendencies did. Like the death vocals were there, the doomier vibe was there. And so for me as a metal fan, like I felt like, hey, this record I can get behind, But when I paired it back with this one, I just felt like, wow, someone said in the comments it's a transition. I get it. You're right, that's a transition. But I almost felt like they should just skip this record entirely and just went totally goth, So for me, I don't think there's enough there. With the earlier stuff, yes. But, being that the album club is like, we are a metal show. and though it's perfectly within our rights to pull in albums that maybe question that. Like, for instance, Witch Hazel, which, not very metal at all, but I ended up loving them. Kellen brought those as a table and I bought the record, but so it's okay for us to bring in things that have us question, what is the definition of metal? But I feel like, these guys really, really, really were on the walking that line and kind of falling off the edge towards not being so. But first album is better.
All right, TJ.
Kind of rereading the question here a little bit. I like a lot of the stuff that draws me in that I really listen to a lot. It generally always has a lot of mood to it to begin with. There's always got to be something that kind of pushes that button for me. That's why I like My Dying Bride so much. Things like that. And, there are moments on this record where I did find myself, gave myself a little bit I was like Marty. It took me a couple of tries and I finally got through it. And I listened to it a couple of times and I was able to kind of push the boredom to the side and kind of pick pieces out of it. And I was like, this is kind of cool. And there were moments where it would pick up. And for this, I don't know, was it the emotional morning gothic content provide enough actually? And so I don't know. Because this record, it's like Marty and his assessment, I think is pretty spot on with this. It's like I hear there are times in this where I'm like, man, if the guy would just belt out a death growl and drop the spoken, dull,
Mouthful of marbles.
Yeah, this would just like even with more somber, really kind of mellow music and a little bit of distorted, it would still be like, oh, there's more power to be had here. And they're just kind of trying to rely on this kind of real melancholy vibe throughout the entire record to kind of carry these songs. And it just, I don't know. I don't think to me, it just doesn't feel like enough for this album to really, because they're not exploring the mood or the sentiments or any of it. They're just kind of taking it in one direction, and it just kind of goes from front to back, and it's just kind of the same. And you don't really find any dynamics in here, and they don't explore that at all. And I think for this record, it's just not enough to carry it across. I think, it has its moments, and it's we'll get into it. It's well put together. There's a lot, and there's not, gripe wise with structure and stuff, but I mean, as far as the gothic and all that, the emotional content, it comes through, it shines, but it seems like they're carrying kind of a singular focus throughout this. And I don't know, apparently there's a lot of women in this one dude's life that really gave him a hard time, and Lorelei and whatever. But
Kellen said each song is about different female mythological characters. So it's a concept.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I saw somebody had said something about a loose concept. And so, And so apparently, they're just kind of striking kind of one pose through this whole album. And I don't know if it's enough. I just feel like they kind of dropped the ball when they could have pushed it over a little bit. And especially this potentially could have been something I really enjoyed. And the more I listened to it, I'm like, God, I really want this to be cool. And it just isn't striking me, for me personally, that way. I noticed in the comments, we got at least one person in here that's loving on this record. And it's like, don't mean to be shitting on your, but it's just like, for me personally, I just don't, I couldn't get there with it. And I wanted to, though. But to your question anyway, they're pushing the metal aesthetic aside for something else. And I think it kind of muddies the waters, if that makes any sense. It just doesn't feel like, they cohesive enough to what they're trying to achieve. Where other bands that are so more focused on it and they can bring the dynamic shifts through it. This just doesn't do it. And I don't think the gothic, the gothic stuff, I don't think it works that well in this context. But I don't know if any of that made any sense, but that's my take on it.
No, and I personally have to agree with all this stuff. Is it still metal? To me, this was a thing back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it came from metal. They're trying to do this stuff. I've said it on this channel before. I don't know if I've ever been able to articulate exactly what I mean with it without sounding super shitty. Because I applaud metal musicians wanting to do something different. But there's a difference between a metal band casting aside all their instruments and picking up Moog synthesizers and we're Tangerine Dream, or a metal guy doing noise, or metal bands doing goth. It's different if a metal band decides to go and do another genre, whereas a band like The Cure that came up being a goth band or whatever type of band that they were, there's a different sort of authenticity, I should say. It would be I think the correct term. And in the case of Aegis here, I listened to this record. The metal side, they stripped 99% of it away to just the very bare bones pedestrian foundation, which signals that they're going to put more colorful decorations on top of the foundation, right? My hope is I don't need this to be a metal record. I don't. I like goth. I love some of this stuff. Am I well versed in it? I'm not. I can skirt around all the big bands and maybe some of the darker underground ones, but I can appreciate a non-metal attempt, but the metal foundation is there, but the stuff they put on top wasn't enough either. The gothic side was just as pedestrian as the metal side. So now what are you left with? You're forced now to you've presented a mood. They nailed the mood for 50 some minutes, however long this record is. The same mood, not a lot of peaks and valleys. You rely solely on the strength of your singers. You've got Kristine singing. She's got a very angelic, beautiful voice. It's a little too swallowed in reverb, but it's there. It's pretty. It's good. This Raymond Rohonyi guy, man, I hate his vocals. I just don't. He doesn't have it. He's hinting at it. It works in certain songs in certain instances. Other times, it's just like I said, a mouthful of marbles, warbling, woe is me type of pseudo Count Chocula shit. It doesn't have a good charismatic voice to carry the weight that is left on the floor from the music. There's a lot of lost opportunities, which tells me this is a very transitional record. Am I answering your question? Is it metal enough? To me, I'm going to say yes, because the foundation's there, and this was very much a thing for this time in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, it's just it was weird putting it on. It was like a nostalgic flashback in time, because there was so many other bands doing it as well. So that was kind of cool to get that shot of, oh yeah, I remember when this was kind of happening. But I think it's not enough on both styles of the metal and the goth. They didn't do enough. If you're going to slack on one, do something special. It sounds like they're trying to figure it out on this record. What do you think, Kellen? Your own question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I enjoyed this record as like a goth pop record. I mean, that was where I kind of went to in terms of an experience. It would be every once in a while you'd hear la chugga 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 chugga, and like that was it. That you got
and a couple type of riffs. Like, okay, this is very familiar from that era.
Yeah, it's like the Gatherings Mandyline comes out, and it
awesome
sets
record.
The scene, right? It'd be really easy to pick that record. This was not going to be about that. This had to be like the years that follow and how many other bands are sort of chasing that sort of impetus as a sound. So for me, like I ended up, I knew when certain parts were coming up. I kind of got to like this chorus I remember, and like that element of the songwriting actually became like familiar to me. So I ended up enjoying some of the songs on the record, but the overall experience, I had to keep on reminding myself, like, this was for Metal Album Club. And I kind of never went there am I listening to it. It just always felt like kind of a gothy, dark pop record, which is, I guess, essentially with some electronic elements is where the direction they went in the future. So it's an interesting, weird of like distillation of a small part of Death Doom's history. And they just took it and ran with it. So it's just interesting that, you think about like goth, and I don't necessarily associate it with a instrumental direction as much as it is sort of like an emotion. Like there's an abstraction to it. I feel the same way about like psychedelic music. It's not necessarily something that you can pinpoint as to how you play psychedelic music as much as the listener has to sort of emotionally experience that. I feel the same way about goth. I can't tell you literally how to play it, but I know like the emotional register that it's supposed to hit at. And this record took me there, but I never really, I had to remind myself that it wasn't really a metal record that I was enjoying.
I could have told you, Kellen.
See, always just as a little background for people, every once in a while, if things go terribly south, no one says anything to each other during the course of the week. It's like, I don't really want to hurt someone. Yes. So like, because Jim will text me, but like, I'm enjoying this, or like, oh man, this is cool, blah, 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 blah. Silence, crickets all week long. So, imagine.
I will say that a weird thing happened this week. This record is full of flaws, but I I realized that tonight as I listened to this album probably 3 or 4 times today getting ready because I've listened to it the week, but I wanted to really kind of zero in on some stuff. I actually, when it's on, I don't mind that it's on. It's on. It's like a vibe. They nail a vibe. They nail the vibe. They do a good job with that. I just think the songs are weak, but the song, there's like 3 songs on here that I think are really good that they should have went more in that direction, but it's enough to keep me interested. There's been songs on albums on here I've hated.
That's a great segue into the next part of the thing. So.
Yeah,
go ahead, Jim.
It's you're right, Marty. It's not offensive to the ears, you know what I mean, but it's not really metal either. You know what I mean? Like I felt the same way. I could play it. There were even some songs while I was washing some dishes I was kind of humming along to, and then
Lord.
And then I'm kind of like, but in terms of like, extreme and or underground or whatever, we want to call this music we discuss every Wednesday, that isn't that a crime itself when it's just okay to be background music when it doesn't punch through and grab you like that, that to me, for the style that we're talking about on a weekly basis, I think that's a crime. Outside of this genre, like I think it's perfectly fine to listen to something that just fills the back room. Like I listen to when I work, if I'm like doing some IT crap that's boring, I listen to a lot of synthwave. There's no vocals, just 80s electronics, that's completely not distracting to me. But I'm not going to go out and buy a synthwave record. You know what I mean? I want something that I feel that moves me. You know what I mean? So anyway, I just wanted to throw that comment in.
All right. Well, let's discuss the musicality and composition of Aegis. Yeah. Jim, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Okay. So I started with my initial comments. I'm going to continue this path where I sort of separate, my, observance of this record from its goth elements and from its metal. So just going to address the goth here. And I'm even less familiar with this genre than you are, Marty. You know a lot more about it than I do. Like the Fields of Nephilim band you listen to a lot. Like I've only ever heard them at your house. But so from that standpoint, I think those sounds are adequate. Or, for me, like I do feel they create atmosphere. I do feel like a nice somber vibe that's kind of like I mentioned before, like good to do other things to, where chores around the house, stuff that involves your job. I think the electronics are well done. The keyboards and the synthesizers that they kind of meld well with like the melodic guitars. Obviously, Kristine's voice is amazing. I love her voice. I agree with you about the male vocals. I feel like they are, a distraction. They're not like horrible to me. I think they're okay in the context of the band, but she's so good and he's so just like wow. Yeah, I mean he's so outshined. I just feel like he should have noticed like, maybe I'll just write lyrics.
And play tambourine.
Yeah. I mean, I have the same opinion about like Lacuna Coil. Like I've always hated that dude's vocals. Just shut up, let the lady sing. And so for me, I guess someone mentioned like it's called the Beauty and the Beast thing. Like I've never been a fan of the Beast side of the Beauty and the Beast bands. Like shut up, I want to hear the good voice. And I think that this band too, not because he's like horrible, but because he's so like mundane compared to her voice, which is like ethereal. It's just like, dude, sit down, shut up. Now, we'll go to the other side, the metal side of the musicality composition. Wow, these are lazy riffs, man.
They really are.
Just over and over and over. It's like, wait, okay, it's about to get a little more intense. I'm sure about to hear it, and there it is. I'm like, dude, come on! Like this. I mean, it was for me as a guitar player. Hey, man, I'm no shredder, dude. Like I never even played. I had like one song I played leads in my bands. Like I was a rhythm guitar player. I'm not a great musician, but I can tell you these are boring riffs. I feel like there was so much opportunity if they wanted to be more metal to do more metal. And I know there was a little bit more capability there listening to the first album. So it's like they intentionally pulled back, and that's okay to pull back as a musician. But when you pull back so far that you sort of just kind of like make a weak gesture to what, your initial genre was, like, why bother doing it at all? So to me, those riffs were very distracting. I mean, again, my favorite song on this album is one that had almost no metal in it at all, because I felt like that was being truer to themselves, where I felt like the metal thing was just, a layer that was kind of a pandering to the fans for their first, album or two. So yeah, on the composition in terms of metal, extremely lazy. The composition in terms of goth, they did it with care. They did it with layering. They did it really, really well in terms of the vocals as well, from one of the vocalists' perspective. But yeah, I did definitely a mixed bag, but I felt that they could have leaned in just completely, and maybe they did on their subsequent records. I don't know. But on this particular record, I feel like they needed to lean more into the goth if they were going to do that. Because just putting a little bit of metal in there, seemed just pointless to me.
Nice. TJ.
Yeah, so I think, I feel like the songs are well put together, but everything is really built around basically pop structures. Everything is repetitive, easy to access, straightforward. There's no frills, nothing going on. They're relying on, the kind of this overarching mood that they're trying to set with everything to kind of carry the songs. And there's, it's just really, uninspiring. The moodiness in these songs occasionally does win over, and yeah. We need more velvet capes all the time, bro. As far as that goes, there's no great display of any kind of, fantastic musicianship going on here. There's just real by the numbers. Everything is just real basic. The one thing that I really, for the whole record, the one thing, and we were, earlier, I absolutely love the lyrics in this. I love the lyric writing in this, the archaic old English and Gaelic and stuff that they dredge up to write all this stuff. I think that for me, as somebody who's pretended to be a lyricist for a long time, it's something that really hits me in my wheelhouse. I'm always trying to, I have all kinds of books with old English and things, and I'm always trying to learn stuff and bring that kind of poetic muse and old language and stuff. I just think it's, I love it. So I started looking at the lyrics. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And there's one line here that, just to give you an example from the song Lorelei, one line, I don't know, because see, the problem is with you, when you use archaic language,
tell us, Professor Ted.
Well, the thing is these words some of these words don't exist anymore, or they've changed meaning over time. And today we know certain words to mean certain things and more commonly be used as a slur. Whereas in ancient times, it was more in reference to firewood. And so there's a line here where he says, the one sole faggot that feeds the fire. And, were that to be read by the wrong person today, why? Well, I'm sure the ADL would be up in arms and the lawyers would be out. But they were, simply talking about the person that was lighting the flame, because that is, in reference to firewood and what have you. But just that kind of, language. And there's some of it so thick I had to break out the the Theopsosaurus and was like, wow, I don't know what that one is. So I enjoy that a lot, though. It's just
What do you say,
just really
suffer in
cool.
Gaelic?
Probably suffer.
Oh, okay.
I would have already put it in a song if I had seen it somewhere. So, I'm working on it, bro. But beyond that, where am I? What else? Yeah. The
What's
farts
the
are
Latin for
forgotten.
pukes?
Right. Well, we can do the pig Latin and do the ukpe, but and otherwise, I mean, their songs are all, I mean, they're just, I don't know, what can you say about them? They're just kind of, you turn it on and like you guys are saying, it's not offensive to listen to, and it runs in the background, and then it's like, oh, it's kind of whatever, and there's nothing bad about any of it, and they put everything together really well, but it's just so kind of paint by numbers, and just it's boring. I in Liv's voice, I definitely like that. She has like an innocent quality to it, just very, very kind of small and meek, but there's still power to it, and it's really good. And that guy, man, I mean, it's so dull, it's just so
very,
dull,
very dull singing,
and it just.
It works on a couple songs here and there. I'm like, oh, okay, he's doing a good job, but he's doing like the talking.
It's just
mumble. Fucking come on,
monotonous and average, and just there are moments when it feeds into the vibe, but it's so for hit and miss, it's just so missed so much. But again, the songs are crafted well. They're put together really well. They're obviously, a band that was working hard on this stuff, but it's so boring. It's just so so I don't know what else I could really say about it. For me personally, I wanted it to be more, and there were places where it's like, God, I want this to just be, I mean, if he had just done death vocals on this, it would have been cool, even just with the kind of average music that would
have filled in a lot of holes.
For sure. So, but yeah.
All right, Kellen.
So I actually got to the point where I thought the guitar work, because there are elements to the songwriting here and the instrumentation that they're sort of creeping in with like industrial sounds. And I ended up interpreting a lot of the guitar work to almost end like replicating a mechanical sort of process. It didn't actually feel like how someone would usually play a guitar through a riff. So it ended up being kind of like, I never thought of it as a real guitar player, because it ended up was repetitive sort of motion the entire time. The strength for this band for me is once we get to a chorus and all these different pieces sort of finally are interwoven, then I would like retain that portion of the song. It's when they're sort of drawn out during the course of a verse where I feel that they're too disparate and don't really connect or like grab me in any way. I'm always waiting for this sort of convergence that happens at the chorus where everything will come together. And those moments at their best on this record are meaningful. But like, it is very much a product of the time period, right? It's not just sort of the gothic elements, but that industrial side also plays a role on this record and adds an element of like, texture and atmosphere that you think about the late 90s and metal. So I think to kind of go over the point though, in terms of structurally, yeah, it reminds me of how a pop song is written, sort of,
Sure.
verse, chorus, and you're kind of, that's the entire formula for this. Where I think their strength is all the keys and piano and clean guitars and electronic drums and different vocals. When it all comes together, I think you have certain refrains that are memorable. And that's like what a great pop song has. is almost built around that kind of choral aspect. So to kind of reiterate what everyone's already said, the songwriting is great in that sense, right? It has direction and structure, and you can remember aspects of it. It just never has like an incredible amount of range to where it sort of grabs you or shakes you from whatever you're doing. It's very much something you kind of settle into. And that kind of is how the entire listen played out for me.
I said a lot of this in the last thing, but I'll try to cut to the point. I again think that the metal side is too stripped back. I agree with Jim on this point. Super boring crunch riffs. Again, that tells me that you plan to put something way more colorful on top of, which two of the songs on here for sure, they definitely did, where like Kellen mentioned the clean guitar passages. I hear The Cure. It's like they have a chord and they're like picking this note type of riff and more jangly sounding. I'm like, okay, they're filling in these gaps. This is actually a high point to this song. It reminds me of, First and Last and Always from songs like Walk Away off this album. Very good song. And a little Fields of the Nephilim in there too. I'm like, yes, okay, more of this. If they would have kept that metal foundation where it is, fine, I can live with that. But colorize, do more of that. Do more of that clean guitar, that Cult vibe, that Cure Fields vibe in there. It makes the song a bit more playful. I know they're trying to go for this, downtrodden, sad thing, which they nail it. They nail it for the entirety of this album. But within it, there's still these colors you could sprinkle in, which they do on the songs Angelique and the, it looks like, I want to say Papaya, but it's not. Papaye. I don't know.
Nailed it.
But, yeah, for the most part, again, nothing offensive on here. The chorus says, I can come away like that Lorelei. It's in my head. It's been in my head all day because I've listened to the album 4 times today. And it's like, that to me that's a good thing. They've done little vocal cues here and there, and their choruses have enough substance that they stick with you at the end of it. It's a tribute to their pop sensibilities on this record and the simplicity of it. I mean, everything, if they wanted a simple but emotive record, they nailed it. 10 out of 10, nailed it. Substance in the songwriting. Again, it feels like a band that is stretching out of their death doom inception, and they don't know where to land yet. And I did see somebody say that after this record, they kind of descended into like EDM type of stuff, which tells me they're pandering to the scene. They're not trying to figure out, they could have really leaned into this goth thing and gotten good at it. I mean, they lay down a foundation here worth building upon. If they just jumped off into EDM after that, they're telling me they're just trying to, they're trying to sing to whatever's popular at the time, which is kind of lame. That's kind of lame. But anyway, let's talk about the production. TJ.
I don't really have any gripes about the production. I like it. I think it works for the record. There's really not much to say because they're not doing anything in here. A little bit of chugging guitar with a bit of distortion and some bass and drums, and then they're, building off Liv's voice and these pop structures. So there's really not a lot about it. I like it. I mean, I think it works really well for what they're doing, and for, this is late 90s, so it's pretty much par for the course as far as that goes. But I think they nailed the aesthetic sonically with this, and I don't think there's really anything else that you could do with it. Except maybe, pull a Lars Ulrich and turn that fucking dude's voice off. But, otherwise, in the mix, but otherwise everything's just it's so just kind of there. And, but it's good. It works for the record.
Jim.
So, yeah, I think the production is very much a product of its time, and I think it's definitely kind of appropriate for the sound and the style, and like where they were label wise and all that kind of stuff. Actually, there are some things about it that I really like. Like on Angelique, the bass sound on that one, the bass is very upfront in the mix, and where it kind of has a very kind of a smooth sort of sound that blends nice with like the keyboards and stuff. And so for that kind of scene that they were maybe not leaned all the way into, Marty, but we're trying to lean into. I think that they from a production side, they did pretty much achieve it. Like where they chose to layer, the acoustic guitars, where they chose to layer the like lightly electric melody lines, going over the chorus, and the amount of their presence in the mix. How much delay that they had on them. Like I said earlier, I really do think they succeeded at creating the atmosphere and that sort of somber mood they had been shooting for. The production largely served that direction that they were going towards. Some kind of nitpicks with it. I would say again, I keep going back to the guitars. Like I don't like the heavy guitar production, like the atmospheric guitar production is well done, but the heavier side, with the muted chords kind of just playing like kind of the same tempo over and over in every song, very simple ascents or descents chord progressions, like power chord stuff. It just sounded the sound of the guitar itself didn't sound very strong. It just didn't have a lot of push behind it. And even in like the fourth track, which I can't pronounce, AOEDE, there's actually, that song is the one that has the most metal riffing in it. It had a lot of riff metal in the verse and the bridge, but it doesn't sound strong enough. It's missing something. But having said that, if these guys really were going goth, and the more they would have pushed that up, the less goth that they would have been. So it's really kind of hard to, smack them around too much for that, because, they were morphing into something different at this point. So, overall, I would say that from a production standpoint, it is a success there.
Kellen.
So two things that I would point out. One, I don't know if it's actually like programmed drums or sampled drums at time on this record. It says they have an actual drummer to the band, but
Yeah,
something about the drum sound at the time, I feel it's like there's like a shared electronic drum sound to this at times, and then actual drums being played.
maybe he's playing electronic kit. I don't know.
Yeah, because something about it didn't sound like a natural drum kit at times. And the other part is like Kristine's voice. The success for me is to the point about her sort of having this sort of meek, ethereal, gentle vocal style. Every time she does sort of enter the fray of this mix with like different parts going on simultaneously, I always feel that she's well placed, right? She doesn't have like this incredibly overwhelming vocal style, but she always seems to stand out. Like they don't compromise her performance, even though the personality of her vocals is sort of light in character. So I think that's a success in terms of how they chose to implement her vocals on this record. Outside of that, I really don't have anything more to add to what's already been said.
I have no real complaint with the production. Like it's atmospheric and ethereal, which I think is what they're going for. If you want to get down and dirty, I'm listening to this on headphones. I can't remember. I should have wrote down the name of the song, but there's some synth lines in the background. And if you were in the stereo field, it would be back here where they were substantial. It was like an actual synth line, but it was like mushy and kind of lost in what was going on. So they really laid on the fact that the synths create like the shroud of atmosphere, but if there's anything beyond just chords going on, it's kind of lost in the aether of the whole thing. But again, as a whole, everything, I like it. And we were talking earlier about, some of those, more, for the time, modern metal, like guitar harmonies at the height of the gothic thing. Sentence did them. Paradise Lost did them. My Dying Bride did them a little bit. You hear it on this album that I don't know. It's just a weird line that they do with the sound of the guitars with the reverb on it. It sounds like a lot of bands from this era doing this gothic style. So again, that's also, and they highlighted that in the production too, which was cool. And you could tell they were really trying to appeal to that crowd that followed bands like Paradise Lost into Draconian Times or beyond, into 1 Second even, or Sentence when they got into a muck, or they started getting into the fourth iteration of that band, like Down, that album, very much playing with the gothic tones, but never fully committing. But anyway, yeah, the production's good. Little nitpicks here and there, not a big deal. Least favorite songs? Kellen.
So the opener, Cassandra, for me, that one's a standout. And the fifth song, Siren. They're interesting in terms of, like, Cassandra opens and it's just the male vocals for the first portion of that song. And at this point in the record, I'm not, like, bothered. So, but that song, I think, in terms of the chorus, always stuck with me. And Siren opens with this very sort of, I think that's a highlight in terms of the industrial elements on this record. Really kind of open, spacious, with Kristine sort of leading the actual vocals on that track. The one that I'm going to actually say I dislike the most is the second one, Lorelei. Yeah. But I just at that point, it didn't stick with me in the same way after following Cassandra. So that's kind of the down part on this record for me. There's other songs I could have chosen just because the range in them doesn't sort of vary as much, but I'm gonna have to pick one to skip. That'll be that one.
Jim.
So quite opposite to Kellen here. Cassandra, man, I do not like that song. I mean, it was a symbol of things to come, very poppy to me. It was where we're first introduced to that boring riff that they basically play in every song. And I was just like, oh no, what's happening? And please get better. And of course it did not. So I can't forgive Cassandra for that. Siren, I also don't like. Kellen, you'd mentioned earlier about the industrial. Yeah, there's industrial elements on Siren which make me hate it. I was immediately taken back to, mid '90s Marilyn Manson. I was just like, this is horrible. I just was not liking it at all. That said, on the positives, like, again, I was like, just drop the metal entirely. I think that's where you'll shine. So for me, Angelique, this, it's funny. Tim said he hated that one the most. That one actually I like the most because I think it was where they just kind of leaned into, like, okay, we're not metal. You know what I mean? And so it being the least metal song, it was the least, like, annoying to me. You know what I mean? I felt like they were just kind of being more true to who they were. And so, like, the denseness of, the acoustic layering and then the keyboards and the bass sound, all that stuff kind of came together. And, for me, it says probably the best. I wrote probably the best song because it isn't trying to be what this band is not, metal. Another song that I thought was actually okay was the last song, which, hey, at least they closed relatively strong. Bacchante, Bacchante. I don't know how to pronounce it. Maybe that's right. I don't know. But it's got flute in it, man.
Zamfir.
Yeah. A little bit of there, and it's just kind of put me in a good mood. So that one I think is okay. So those are my picks.
Right on, Teach.
Yeah, so the only song that really kind of that I ended up liking, and you guys already kind of. I liked Lorelei. I liked the chorus in it. I liked how somber it is. The rest of the record, I just don't even. I don't know. It was just on and playing, and I heard all the same stuff you guys heard, but none of it was really kind of. There were little pieces here and there, and I just didn't. I was too sleepy to pick it apart, so I just was like, whatever. There's nothing, hate or not, like whatever. That's just kind of what it was. So I thought Lorelei had a really cool part in it, and that's kind of the extent of it for me on that. So,
yeah. All right. I can say that there's nothing on here I hated. I think all of it is, well, that Aode song, too simplistic. It relies on a downtrodden and heavy mood with very little substance behind it. So that's probably my least favorite on here. Favorite is Angelique. It's kind of funny how we're all gravitating kind of towards that one because it is definitely the best song. The clean Kier guitar line styles, picking out notes of a chord with dreamy chorus reverb. It gives a little bit more life to a fairly downtrodden and samey type of album. That papaya, whatever, is in the same vein. I like that song a lot as well. Siren I actually like for the fact that Liv takes center stage in the vocals, which do that more. Tell that guy to shut his pie hole. Angelic vocals over a more predominant crunch. Song has more movement and interest, though remains very simplistic. That's just the very essence of this album, simplistic. Yet with all these I'm a fan of simple lines layered together. When they all come together, it creates something bigger than the individual parts themselves. They do actually achieve this here, but man, the parts are so simple. It's like, oof. It's tough. Again, a transitional album. I wanted a bit more out of here, and I'd be real interested to hear the follow up if they get there. If it's electronic, EDM, I don't care about that. Anyway, Judgment. Final thoughts, Kellen.
Well, I mean, I own it, but yeah, I don't think I'll pull it out like as a metal listen though. I think it's gonna be sort of like a dark pop record for me, and yeah. So I don't know how much time I want to spend here in terms of like building a record collection around this particular era, though.
If you're gonna do that, just start digging into the goth classics.
Yeah,
this middle of the road metal goth shit. There's some good bands, but man, they're few and far between.
Right. I think. We've previously been avoiding this world for there's probably a reason for that.
Well, none of us live in it, I wanted to pick Sentenced to Muck, but I ended up picking North from Here.
Right.
Muck is one of my favorite albums by them, that band.
It's but we can cross a goth, record off the list and
yeah.
We'll keep on exploring potentially areas that we haven't, but I thought this would get people, at least if they don't take a nap through it, annoyed and frustrated and cursing my name. So I think I put DJ to sleep. Jim is burning me in effigy. So I think
well, to in your defense, it really doesn't take much to put me to sleep. So so it's all right. It's all right.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be any surprise to anyone that how I will not ever listen to this record again. Yeah, this is
what? No.
This is absolutely not for me in any way, shape, or form. I respect their goth side and what they're trying to do, but yeah, you said it well just now, Marty. If you're gonna do goth, if this is something you're interested in, for my money, just go and just buy the good goth records. You know what I mean? I feel like this sort of like half metal, half goth thing is kind of mealy mouthed in execution. You know what I mean? Very, very few bands succeed in doing this kind of stuff well. And most of those albums, I still don't even own those. I don't even own Amok. I don't plan on buying it. I don't care about later Tiamat. I don't care about later Paradise Lost. I just don't care. It's not something that moves me. So, yeah, I'm not going to go there. The closest I'm ever going to come to this stuff is Typo. October Rust. That's enough for me. I'm good with that. So yeah, I'm not going to give this a number grade this week because I don't feel it's fair since I'm not into the genre. But I will say I'm happy to, as Kellen said, cross the line through this goth record. So
TJ.
Yeah, my sleep number on this is 6.
Sleep.
So there you go.
Kellen, you went already, right?
Yeah.
For me, at the end of the day today, I'm listening to this. I'm like, if this was sitting in a used bin for $5 and I was looking at it, would I buy it? I might buy it. It didn't offend me. The more I spun it this week, the more I appreciated it. Do I think it's an exceptional record? I think there's some exceptional talent. I mean, obviously, Kristine, I mean, she went on to be in Leaves' Eyes and a bunch of other stuff. Not a bunch, maybe. So some other stuff. She's in some new, I think, doing solo stuff now. She's well recognized and regarded in the scene as a talent. Yeah, I can appreciate their place. This is just an avenue, a lane of more commercialized metal that I always kind of skirted around. I had to, I would get a bunch of the promos in the mail back in the day when it was all happening. So, hearing it again reminded me of that time a little bit, which was cool. But yeah, if it was like $5 in a used bin, I might buy it. I think I would probably get more spins out of a half-cooked pseudo-goth record than I would a half-cooked metal record. Some of the stuff on here that we reviewed, I might have appreciated it, but will I buy this at the end of it? That's no quite often. But I can't think of an album right off the top of my head, or like that Plague Wielder album. If that was $5 in the used bin, would I buy it? Probably not. I probably, because I know
Plague Fever.
Plague Fever. I don't know that I would ever come back to it because I'd rather listen to Dark Throne or whatever else. But a band like this, if you put this up against like a Gathering record, I'm going to listen to Gathering all day long. But yeah, I know. I might buy it. I'm going to give it. I'm with Ted's sleep number 6. I think this is a 6.5 all day for me. Not offensive. It's not offensive. Right, or Disintegration, or yeah, the early Cure stuff. No, I'm gonna listen to that. I'm gonna listen to that stuff all day long. But 100, yeah, like I said, Simon, this is a lane, man. People like this stuff. It's very popular in Europe. It was the moment it came out, and I think it still probably is. Like bands like Nightwish are huge. It's just kind of the thing. Except Nightwish, they have more meat on the bone. They have Floor Jansen, her vocals are amazing, amazeballs. And the keyboard work is stellar. The composition is very, but it blows. Does it? It's still good. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it blows. Yep. Here we go. That's not with Floor. That's with Chara. I can't remember her name, but yeah, it's good. They're a good band. Do I love it? No, but I can watch them live on a Vakken thing and be impressed by the performance, and people love that shit. Anyway, yeah, it was a good pick, Kellen, a good discussion. And that leaves us to next week's pick, which is TJ. What did you come up with?
Well, as I sat here trying to stay awake, I had a thought. This record is 49 minutes long. It's one record. Now, I haven't run this by you yet, and I'm going to put it out there right now because I think this is interesting. So what if we picked and had a battle between 2 albums that equaled 50 minutes of music? And we decided which one is the better one. What does that sound like? Is that a bad idea?
No, but how do you want to set it up?
We'll set it up like this. It's
the same with the same outline. We'll go through the same shit.
It's 50 minutes of music. It's two bands. We're going to decide what we think, and we're going to pick a winner at the end. We're going to decide what, where, and why. Maybe I can come up with a bonus, something to throw in there. I just thought maybe this would be just a little different. We listen to these 50-minute pieces of art, and it's like, well, why not? Let's combine.
Are they two bands? Are they comparable bands though? Are they like, oh, we're gonna put this rap metal album up against this black metal album? Okay.
No. We have a profound lore artist, Warp Chamber, implements of excruciation, 30 minutes of pummeling death metal, and many of you have probably heard of this band, Nails. You Will Never Be One of Us. And so 21 minutes of grinding death. And I thought, why not put these albums head to head and make an interesting conversation? And Mr. Explosive Action said it's time to listen to Porno Gore Grind. Well, I don't own any. I don't have any. But I thought it's time to, this record sucked.
Kellen's about to have a whole bunch of it. I'm just saying.
Next time I get the pick.
Kellen's Aegis pick. It sucked all the air out of the room.
What's the name of that Warp Chamber album?
Warp Chamber, Implements of Excruciation and Nails. You Will Never Be One of Us.
Implements of Excruciation?
Yeah.
Wow, that rolls off the tongue.
It does. And there's 4 songs on here that equal 30 minutes, and they even put it in a gatefold.
Cha-ching, Chris Bruni making it rain. Woo!
But it's a great record. But anyway, we won't get into that right now. But
I'm down with it. If you guys are down with it, I'm open for the challenge. What do you guys?
I just thought, you know what? We listened to 50 minutes of creative whatever all the time. Like, well, why not do a little and see who wins the day? See who rules the roost. I don't know.
TJ to change the album club format without talking to any of us.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm the idea guy. It's on the fly, bro. It's like what iron's hot. It's and so
what happens if it's a tie? What happens if 2 of us think one and 2 of us think the other? Well, then what?
Whatever. Then hey, we had a great time talking about it, didn't we?
All right, so we'll try. We'll give it a try. Look, so it's kind of like a keeper reap. It's like a keeper reap, sort of.
Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't know. Call it whatever you want. I just thought it was something to do that was different, and I wanted. And both these albums are so short. I was just like, damn it. And I felt like we needed to swing it back into some something more extreme. So,
Rick is encouraging him. Great job, Rick.
And hey, look, I asked. Everybody could have said nah. It would have been fine.
That's fine. We'll try. We'll try your thing and ridicule you if it sucks.
Well, hey, you got to try new positions every once in a while, or it gets stale, right, bro? Yeah, Marty's like, well, missionaries. Never mind. I won't. We just won't even. We won't say nothing. I just thought it was a fun idea, and
we'll give it a shot.
Like it, don't like it. Then tough. Too much thinking. You know what? We had this conversation at band practice the other day, and I said, I think too much, and I need to stop. And look at me doing it again. So here we go. So
all right, so it's Warp Chamber, Implements of Excruciation against Nails versus You Will Never Be One of Us, which
by Nails.
Yeah.
Get it right.
All right, everybody, that's it. Good show. We will be back on Friday with our friend Jimmy from Future Ruins channel. We're going to be talking about albums we eventually warmed up to. So that should be a fun one. And Kellen, you got anything going on? Anything coming up?
You should see a heavy metallurgy review from me coming up here soon. I've got all recorded. I should need to send it over Marty's way. So maybe next week that'll be coming your way.
And if you're watching this, about 30% of the people that watch don't subscribe. Why don't you go ahead and subscribe and go check out our reviews? They're pretty cool. We're having fun with them. Jim, anything coming up for you?
Nope, but you need to send me more Glorious Dead 7 inches so I can sell them.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I will do that. I'm gonna write it down.
That's why I come on the show, to remind Marty to send me stuff.
I just so many irons in the fire. I forget. TJ, anything going on? All right. Screw you then. Anybody, we'll see you next time, and we'll see you Friday. Have a great one. Cheers.